Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us to another episode of Root Cause Solutions for You. I'm your host. My name is Fabiola, and I am super delighted today and super honored to have Nichi joining us today because I've been to a few conferences where she has shared some amazing information about kids, how to help kids through difficult times, how to empower women, give them tools. So I'm just so delighted to have her with us today and stealing some of her knowledge and information. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Nichi, for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be here. Excited to
Yeah,
share.
that's so awesome. Tell us about yourself and how you got started on this journey.
Oh gosh, there's so much to share. I think, in the end, I call myself a holistic health practitioner because the certificate stack is high. It's thick. And essentially, I work with families one on one. I kind of have two tracks of people that I serve. I have a practitioner track and kind of the mom children track, and often she's the same person. And so I get this really great opportunity for mentoring. We have a practitioner mentorship. I teach muscle testing. I teach the method of intentional inquiry. I also teach muscle testing for cell core biosciences, and I'm working on a book. So it's really fun to watch, 26 years of experience in the holistic healthcare industry, like coming to fruition in front of me, which is really fun. Our goal every day in my practice is to empower moms. I kind of think we've, as a society, turned off the critical thinking skills in regards to health in regards to moms and how they think about the health of their children and their families and who they're instilling authority over and around in regards to that topic. So my goal is always getting her to think bigger, getting her to connect inward, um, getting her to see the resources that are available to her, the tools that are available to her. Some are completely free, right? How well and easily she can build a holistic healthcare village, a care team around her and what that might look like. So we spend the majority of the time in the program memberships that I offer really educating it. Every time we're connecting the dots with muscle testing and connecting the dots with a, formula or whatever we're utilizing, it's an opportunity for her to go like, okay, fever, this worked. I'm going to remember that next time. Eczema rash, this topical worked. I'm going to remember that next time. Like as moms, we just have that, like we put it in the archives or scratch it in a notebook somewhere because nobody likes being in a pickle when we're dealing with our own kids at home. So the more we can empower her to like dig deep and think big and stay curious, the farther we get.
Yeah, no, that's so powerful, and I totally agree with you. And I think you are a midwife as well, if I'm correct.
No, I was a birth doula for
Okay.
20 years. Yep. So I, have nearly delivered babies and was quite thankful when the midwives arrived. Would have been a cool experience, but it's always nice to have the one educated on that in the room. But that was a tremendous experience. And I have to say, it's many of those families that started my initial practice base of, can you help us figure out why our baby is projectile vomiting and why our baby has colic and why our baby is covered with eczema and why after this incredible pregnancy and birth experience, I dove deep into a depression or, into autoimmune disease, or I'm watching this happen in families around me. And it was so frustrating. I was also trained as a health coach. And so from like the childbirth educator standpoint, the birth doula, cranial sacral, big body work background, having worked in a functional medicine clinic, I could see more broadly that the answer was right in front of me, but there was like a way to communicate with the body that was missing. And though I learned how to muscle test when I was 20, it was just like in a structural fashion. And so I just hadn't like thought with how I could tweak it to think with the body in a different way. So with kind of that push of every new text message or email or phone call of like, do you have any idea what to do? Do you have any idea who we should see? I just remember thinking, if there was a way for me to know just like a little bit more about what they have going on, I know that I have access to like a plethora of suggestions and resources. And probably, within a day or a week or so, we were at a chiropractor getting our two youngest muscle tested. They were babies at the time. And we'd done this several times. And I just went, muscle testing. Oh my gosh, that's what it is. It's muscle testing. And so, of course, I was like, I'm not enough and I don't know enough and I don't have enough training and yada, 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 right? All these considerations and objections I deal with new practitioners right off the bat. I think it's a little different in every state, but here in Minnesota, I had like license, if you will, to touch bodies, which is what was needed as a birth doula and a body worker. And so, I was able to just start my muscle testing practice right away. And so I've been muscle testing full time since 2011, I think it is at this point. Yeah, I know. And it never ceases to amaze me, right? Like I kind of, like I say to my family, it's like getting, sitting down in front of the computer, because now I'm entirely virtual, is like every day it's like, pardon my French, but it's like, on the next episode of You Can't Make This Shit Up, it's like the kinds of things we see are just like, they're so interesting, and really does take that kind of quiet inquiry and stepping back, but also leaning in at the same time in a way that only muscle testing can allow you to do, to start connecting your intuition with what and the framework of how you've been trained to like come up with the exact answer in a non-diagnostic way, right? It's just energetic work, but so much clarity comes for folks with utilizing this particular technology. I just feel I feel so lucky and blessed and honored to do what I do. It's unreal.
I totally know where you're coming from. And I think working with babies, right? I mean, it's like they don't know how to talk yet, right? Like verbally, they don't know how to vocalize something, but it doesn't mean they're not communicating something. And I don't know if maybe this has happened to you, but where you get a specific thought, like you feel like someone sent you a message, and that may sound a little weird to some people, but sometimes like someone's thinking of you. And I think that's how babies, tend to communicate through their emotions, what they're expressing. Their different cries mean something, and then figure it out, right? Like, so I do believe that muscle testing, it's that way of a tool for them to communicate and say, hey, this is what's going on, or and then to find out why their tummy hurts, right? I've had the opportunity to be working with more children as my client base expands, and it's just amazing what responses you get from children, right? And how aware and sponges, and they're observant, and they're curious about the stuff that may be affecting their bodies or what they feel this way. So I totally appreciate what you do and the way that you empower babies and their families, because you've been an advocate for them for so long too. Yeah,
absolutely. I think it's interesting. They tend to tell you where to go or show you where you need to be. Yeah, when you're working with them in terms of like, say, the area of pain or discomfort, and they're nonverbal. Babies are nonverbal, but like, even older kids, they might not be able to articulate what's going on. But if you pay attention to how they're sitting or how they're holding themselves or how they're engaging, pretty soon you're drawn, to a certain area and get information really easily in that way. I just tell people I speak muscle testing. It's like my second language, and it often comes first, actually. My kids will even say, like, stop testing everything, Mom. Right? Like, we'll be in the store or we'll be, whatever we're doing. And it's funny. I don't even, realize I'm doing it sometimes. But so I'm, there are times where I'm not even conscious of what it is that my little fingers, are checking for, but it's just constantly in motion.
Yeah, that innate ability, right? That's just what you're gravitating towards. I remember being a kid. I wasn't the most social person. I am better now, but when I was a kid, I never considered myself to be very social. But I do feel there's been a decline of kids being able to socialize, right? And being able to find themselves their place within their group or even within the family. And then we have all these behavioral issues, right? And then you have ADHD, you have all. So what's based on your work with kids and what would you attribute some of the root causes to be as to what some of those behavioral, quote unquote, behavioral issues might be? Yeah, the cause of some of those things based on the work you've been doing.
Well, it's a good question. One of the things I tell families right off the bat is that there isn't just one problem, i.e., one root cause, and there is definitely not just one solution. So, being open to how things have to flow and shift inside of a program, at least when they're working with me, from the emotional to the physical and everywhere in between. We do see a lot of parasites in kids, and I'm sure to tell parents, here's the deal: we're a walking organism, like we're a bug, and we house other bugs, and it's completely normal. The problem is just when the scale gets tipped, too far in one direction. So let's find out why that is, and bring things back into balance. And for kids, that can be a toxicity. It could be mold. It could be chlorine, whatever. It could just be any sort of metal or chemical toxicity. It could be a vaccine injury, medication that they're having trouble detoxing. It can be food. I a lot of times find food issues in kids to be more parasitically bound, right? Because just that overreactivity of the immune system that these bugs tend to cause. And suddenly they're just like, I can't handle this and I can't handle that. And that's a super frustrating experience for parents who are just like, eat, like just eat.
Yeah.
To have the, someone coming in to see me because someone else told them you've got to take your kid off of these, 7 foods or something. And kids can be picky, and that's tricky work, right? Um, so you can't also ignore just that emotional and energetic stress load that definitely can come from the classroom itself. If we're talking about sort of like school year,
Right.
focus, concentration, or behavioral issues, it can be a household concern. It can be an at school concern. It can be like inner turmoil. It can be, this might sort of push the envelope for people, but it could be what we would call like maybe miasmic or generational per se. Like it's not anything necessarily that's going on around them in the moment, but could be kind of what they came into this life with generationally, right? The sort of like, I don't know if you'd call it a gift, right? But you can, like, alcoholism can be that. It's not like kids are alcoholics, but it in the sense that if there have been behavioral issues kind of up the line, we can see that in kids and have no real reason for why that's showing up. So
Yeah.
the more we lean into being willing to look at that emotional and energetic need for clearing and need for doing that work, the better. In fact, I won't take anyone on who's not willing to look at that side and do that work, because stress is often the obstacle. It's the detour. It's the stop. It's the thing that blocks a program from moving forward. It's the thing that keeps somebody from getting better. So if we're going to keep trying to skirt around the issue, like beat around the bush all the time, they're going to spend a ton of money and a ton of time. That's also my time. They've paid for it. It's still my time that could be
Yeah.
used in a valuable way in another arena, right? And so I want to make sure that those who are looking to take on this work are really willing to truly look at this in a holistic, well-rounded manner so that we can start chopping away at those root causes. An analogy I was using in an interview yesterday was like, so you've got this, you've made a pot of spaghetti, right? And if you ever had the opportunity to throw that pot of spaghetti, like you put the spaghetti in the strainer, right? And then like you toss it against the wall. So what's going to happen first is a whole bunch of that's going to fall to the floor. And so when a child or anyone comes for muscle testing, it's like what we see first is all the stuff that's on that silver tray, that silver platter that they're like, here you go. This is the right now. That's all the stuff that immediately falls off the wall. All those pasta noodles that fall off the wall easily. And then you're going to see just like a whole bunch that stick, but are kind of easy to remove one by one, right? So we're kind of starting to get at the layers. This could be like you're peeling back the layers of the onion analogy. What and we're gonna get glimpses for sure of the things that seem a little more sticky, but by and large, what we are actually looking for and waiting for is the goopy, gluey, gunky pasta that we have to kind of scrape off the wall. Like those are the problems. Those are the true root causes. And we may have seen sort of flavors of that, right? Or kind of energies of that previously. But you also might be like, why do these things keep showing up? Why do they keep? Because they're just stuck so deeply back there, right? So it really does take patience to unfold this kind of information and patience to repattern and recondition the subconscious mind and the physical manifestation, of that sort of internal stress the body experiences, whether it's throwing out hives or whether it's throwing out eczema or it's throwing out, headaches or stomach aches or whatever the case may be.
Mhm.
I have certainty in the work that I do, and I have built up an incredible team of resources. Yes, locally, but I do see people across the nation and internationally even. And so I've had to recreate what does my kind of immediate network look like so that I can connect people to a practitioner who does structural energy work if we need to go that far, if there isn't somebody locally that they can look at. But really, it is such an opportunity to have such a deep, deep look. So stress, energetic and emotional stress could be foods, could be bugs, could be toxins, and kind of anything in between.
You're right, because I think stress is such an important topic, and I think there are tools out there, but then I feel like sometimes those tools are just, they don't meet what we need to truly be able to get to the root cause of that, emotional stress. And I feel like when you're not stressed, right, when you support someone's nervous system that way, then they become more resilient to the future exposure, or even the addressing of that specific parasites, Lyme, heavy metals, Lyme co-infections, mold, mycotoxins, all that stuff. So I agree with you in terms of like that, the emotional aspect of it, and really it takes a lot, right, to confront one's emotions, right, and then the domino effect that our emotions may have on the people around us. And I think specifically with kids, it's just so it's really listening to them. We live in a fast world, right? We want fast things, drive through Amazon Prime in 2 days, downloads in 5 seconds or less. And I think kids are just like,
we've been trained well. We've been trained very well.
yes. And I think kids are just like almost like more willing to pause and be like, wait, hold on, like they're observant, they're curious, because they're obviously very, very smart, and they're trying to communicate. So I totally agree with you as far as addressing the emotional aspect of it. Why is this case not getting better, or why is the whole household exploding? And then when you get to more of the root causes, what's keeping them there is that emotional component. So
and we can't step over the what has just occurred, in the sense that, we've got this like universe of COVID kids and COVID babies. And like, we thought it sucked as adults, right? I mean, we had to change, some of us had to change the way we did things and some of us didn't. But what on average these households went through, no matter what their belief system is or was, almost traumatic and downright traumatic, actually, for some of them. In some cases, we know this, children wasn't the safest bet for them to be stuck in their homes with their families. That's a whole situation, right? Moms and dads trying to figure out what to do. There's like the financial stress, then there is the stress of one or both partners working from home, and now then the kids can't go to school and they're supposed to go to school online, which actually there's a whole learning curve with that just never occurred. So you've just got a whole bunch of people thrown into a situation that left a lot of unanswered questions, a lack of confidence and certainty about how things are being handled and managed, a lack of confidence in making the choices that we felt innately were important to make, or morals and beliefs that were important to keep. And we were just being pushed on every button around that. And so there is a mental health, like you could call that an epidemic of its own, right? With what we're seeing and kind of the dissociation, the shutdown of like our teens and our young men and women, right? And in some of these toddlers who never got to meet anyone for 2 to 3 years outside of their mom, their dad, or their sibling, or a very close loved one, or a neighbor over a fence, never knew what a face looked like fully because all they saw were eyes. Like, how, what? So we really do have to have an open mind and an open heart when we're working with these families, to really meet them where they're at and build that trust and that rapport to, help guide them forward. And if anything, you've done your work when you've created that empowered state over there with them, and they are now just feeling more grounded in the choices that they've made, or willing to shift their mindset a bit and see that maybe they do want to press redo and make different decisions than they did the first time around, no matter what that is. So there's a lot of like cleaning up the immune system and like cellular repair and managing stress, and giving them tools sometimes that are free and quite easy to come by, that they wouldn't know to look for. Like that's our job. That's on us, right? To keep them inspired, keep them excited, keep them curious about what's next in their healthcare journey for them and their family members. And, in the end, it ends up being quite a beautiful relationship and truly quite an opportunity to be that inspired guide, so to speak.
I totally agree with you. So let's back up a little bit. So parasites, right? I mean, parasites are, I do believe that we all have them, right? And I think it's such an ignored phenomena that goes unhandled. It goes, parasite can live in you for over 20 years. You don't even know it. Doesn't have to be creating any active issues. And then suddenly you're like, what's going on with me?
Right.
And no one figured it out. And I believe our testing, it's faulty, right? I mean, a stool test is just not going to give you the information you need. Different types of parasites migrate to different areas of the body. And so what are some of the indicators that one could look for that will go ding, ding, potentially there's a parasite issue that can lead us to addressing some of the behavioral issues we're running into?
And so you are asking in regards to pediatrics, right? Specifically? Okay. Yeah. Well, rashing, like any sort of eczema-like, sometimes sort of sandpapery. We can sometimes see sort of sandpapery rashes, splotchy, blotchy, hives, itching, welts. The kids who welt up when they get bug bites. That's often a big indicator from just in my own practice. Kids don't often talk about like a headache, maybe like an adolescent or a teen might, but they'll say things like my brain hurts, and so it's like being able to like think with the language that they use. You're like, oh, he's got a headache. Like that's what's happening here. Right. Or, so we'll hear things like that, like the distended bellies, the bloated bellies where you've got like this perfectly proportioned child, and then you've got like, this little bloated, distended belly. I would say, the kids like sort of vacillate, IBS-D to IBS-C. So they've got this sort of diarrhea or constipation kind of scenario. I know parents a lot get stuck with that. Oh, they go and like it's super loose and liquidy, but they go, but they don't actually understand that that's a form of constipation, and that what we're dealing with is like a bigger, backup issue, and what that could be all about themselves. I sometimes see like the sore throats and the swollen glands. That is not something that should be dismissed. Like you can look at the earaches and the strep throats and just kind of, if you can kind of continue to test behind what's showing up, it's not a surprise to see some sort of parasite energy involved with any of that. The insomnia, like the restless legs, the leg pain particularly, which we grew up calling it growing pains. And I don't know that that's what that is, according to things that I've seen in my practice. So this like tremendous like foot pain and leg pain that kids wake up with, it's often like a nighttime or evening phenomenon. The restless sleeper, nightmares. I mean, it's like there are canker sores, bruising. Wow. I mean, yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot. And then there's the, like we talked about earlier, there's the behavioral side and the emotional side, kind of the 0 to 60 kid, like zero to kind of, 0 to anger. That's like common way to look at that. But there's also an acupuncturist, one of my muscle testing students, actually, when I was trying to explain this one day, I was like, it's like 0 to happy, like too much, like so much so. And she's like, oh, in Eastern medicine, we call that inappropriate joy. It was such a perfect way to describe, because there's like being happy and joyful, and then there's like this maniacal kind of, crazed, right? Yeah, that comes along with it. So with kids, it really can be anything, and with adults, it really can be anything, as well. But those are the things I commonly see, as well as just sort of knowing, like, do they have pets in the house? Are they running around barefoot like every kid should be? Are they swimming in lakes? We can't stop living life, right? So parasites are going to be a part of our experience. I always say life just keeps lifing. So it's a matter of kind of managing that scale. What are the things that are pushing the body's level of resilience and adaptability down, and driving that inflammation up? So when we find out what those are, and we kind of clamp down on those toxins and start mopping them up, sweeping them out of the way, opening drainage, giving the body more energy, and especially managing that emotional and energetic side, it's like, everybody can take a sigh of relief at home, because as we know, like happy children are happy parents are happy children, right? That goes both ways. So when that scale has tipped too far in one direction, everybody can be quite miserable.
Yeah, no, totally. I was watching a replay from one of the Cellcore ecos, and where Dr. Tim Griswold was talking about parasites and how they actually have their own frequencies, and since they are within you, if they also get upset, right? They also procreate, they also die, they also poop, and so there's this living organism, and they also get upset, they also have emotions, and if there's this, because they operate such vibration wavelengths, if the endocrine system then gets confused, it gets like, well, who's upset? But the endocrine system isn't going to be like, no, I have to produce more cortisol, or I have to produce adrenaline, or it's going to be doing something, right? How that endocrine disruption can occur from the parasite energy that one may be experiencing. And so yeah, topping with making you more resilient with emotional work, supporting your body that way, supporting yourself that way, and then addressing the bugs is like a perfect combo, where you're not as effect of them
Mm-hmm.
when going through a cleanse, right? Because we all need to do a parasite cleanse at some point.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. No, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, so moms, right? I mean, moms are warriors, right? It takes a village, right, to
Mm-hmm.
raise kids. And one of my favorite animals are elephants. You know, elephants travel in packs, and their leaders are the females, and they pass knowledge generation to generation, like water routes. They're literally super efficient. And when an elephant is giving birth, then the other elephants that have not, they don't have any baby elephants, they
Mm-hmm.
help the moms that just, delivered baby
Mm-hmm.
elephants. And it's like a whole system.
Right.
That's always been so fascinating. And I think we, like we mentioned earlier, we live in such a fast-paced society, fast-paced world. You've have your baby, you barely have 3 months to recover, boom, you're back to work, right? And if you're
Mm-hmm.
lucky, you had all that time. And same thing goes with for dads, because then often sometimes we ignore dads as well, right? But they should really
Mm-hmm.
be lumped into that category. And so what are some of your best ways that we can support moms, right? Not only emotionally but physically. And yeah, because they've just gone through, I'm sure, I don't have any kids of my own, but I'm sure giving birth is not small potatoes. And then the
It's
the
not.
recovery of it, right?
Right. Right. Yeah. Yes. This is where I love the world of tools and gadgets. There's knowledge and there's wisdom, right? So there's knowing who your people are, who will hold you up and who will provide you with that kind of knowledge, wisdom, and insight that you're looking for. And then I think then it comes down to tools. So what are your tools and resources? So homeopathic remedies are fabulous to have around, postpartum on through raising children. They're very easy to administer. You can pick them up at Whole Foods or any natural foods co-op. You can get them on Amazon, for crying out loud. So those are quite fabulous. A book that I recommend, I'm going to butcher the name. It's written by Kate Birch. She was our family homeopath for a number of years. And I think it's called, so just search Kate Birch on Amazon. I think it's called like the Family Care Manual. It's a green book, big yellow flower on the front. And the way she wrote it is really for the mom. So it's categorized, like there's a cough section, a sore throat section, those kinds of sections, so that you can very quickly familiarize yourself with how homeopathic remedies work and lean into understanding that it's more about how that remedy describes your child than it is just take one of these remedies because it'll help the sore throat kind of scenario. So the work of living and being a holistic lifestyle is the work of being connected and paying attention, right? And there is intuition involved in that. There's that mama knowing. I always listen to moms, always, always, always. I'll say like, that was gold right there. Hold on a second. Like, I'm going to jot that down. I'm going to hold it here. I'm going to finish doing what I'm doing. And, it's like 50-50. Either what I'm doing is going to completely connect, or I'm going to finish and I'm like, what is this thing that she's talking about? Like, I don't see this. But the more I stay curious, the more I lean into my intuition. It's like something opens and you're going to be able to see that. There's going to be like an access point, right? So, homeopathic remedies, things like the castor pack, that is like something every family should have. I mean, yes, you can make it. It's kind of messy and cumbersome, really easy to buy them. They're very cost effective. I think having 3 of them makes sense: a mama size, a kid size, and maybe a thyroid size, because you can use it for many more things outside of a thyroid, like bruises, bumps, aches, pains, and whatnot in kids. And what I love about a castor pack is that it isn't just like, oh, let's get everybody pooping, right? But we know how impactful it is to draw heat and inflammation out of the body by driving the anti-inflammatory impact of castor oil and its benefits deeper into the body. But what I love is sometimes as moms, we need like a little placebo effect. because sometimes mama love just isn't enough to make people feel better, even when there's not really anything going on. And so being able to wrap a little castor pack gets like a little mama touch in there, feels like a hug. It's warm and embracing, right? Everybody likes it. Allows mom to like walk away for a minute and know that what she has done and kind of left and provided her small human with is just like support and love. I love topicals, topical creams, room sprays, or like essential oil sprays that you can make because they change the energy of the room.
Nice.
Little ones typically like creams, anything that can be applied, they typically like that's soft and sort of easy. And again, it's something that mom's doing. So a lot of times what they are needing is that parent, of course, that parent attention. But it does provide calm for both, mom and child, or parent and child. And it's why I love like things like the Healy. It's like when you can change the frequency of the room, or you can buy little sound vibration machines and plug them into your home. And you put them on, we have 2 of them in our home, and I can kind of program them for like what frequency are we at. And in fact, an interesting story, when I first bought it and plugged it in, I think they're just called sound, they were like $20 on Amazon, soundscape frequencies or something. I had the one on like lowering I think it was like a fear, like lowering fear or something like that. And I did that because my youngest had been really feeling like scared at bedtime, and very typical for the age, but normal, but just this is what I was leaning into. And when I first bought it, I tucked it behind a picture frame and I put it on the lowest volume possible, out of the way. And with the hustle and bustle of the dog and the family and everything, you don't notice it until it's quiet in the house, until like we're snuggled up on the couch reading or something. And then I would see him like look up, and he's looking around. And I said, "What are you looking for?" And he's like, "Mom, what's that noise? Mom, that's totally creeping me out."
Oh my
And I
God.
remember thinking like, okay, I'll turn it off, because to me, I was like, it hit his threshold, but it also is nudging on the very thing he's dealing with. Do you see
Interesting.
that? So it
Yeah.
became this like very effortless, easy way for me to start tapping into, like no pun intended, what was going on. So I think the more we as practitioners are willing to acknowledge that there are some pretty great things out there that we can use that make our jobs way easier as practitioners, to be honest with you. And sometimes act as a little like third party validation because we get feedback about how these things work. And then things that families can easily pick up on their own too. So it's kind of like taking your work. How do you take your work and put it in a box and send it home with them,
Yeah.
and continue to build that relationship? Because the more, my belief is, the more I support mom in leaning into her own gut instinct and making her right for what she's putting together, that's like a lifelong relationship there, right? And we get to
Yeah.
grow together, and I get to care for her kids for a long time. And that is so juicy to me. I just love that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because it's about, and you're right, it's about building that extension because sometimes I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, don't you wish you could just live with your clients and then anytime something happened, they you just test them and be like, okay, do this, or I
Yeah.
get the text, any suggestions? This happened, and I'm like, yeah, make these changes, and so it's definitely that village concept, but
Mm-hmm.
I love that, and that's gonna be a part of my lifestyle suggestions. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna get this little gizmo, you're gonna put it here, and then you're gonna watch,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Mm-hmm.
see, because definitely, yes, I agree. The least stressed out mom, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
emotions are like you project, right? And if you project, your kids, other family members are picking up on those emotions. And then
Mm-hmm.
sometimes I'm like, wait, I wasn't feeling upset, but you walked in upset, and now I'm upset now. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
really come in that whole space, and yeah, and just supporting women and dads in any way that we can, because the more headspace they have, then the easier it's going to be for them to heal and repair themselves, as well
Mm-hmm.
as kids are going to be like, oh, mom and dad are doing great. There's nothing
Yep.
going on upsetting, and then they're going to be able to feel safer. Their nervous systems are going to be more in check, and then they're going to
Mm-hmm.
respond better to the therapies that they're doing, whether it's chiropractor, acupuncture, muscle testing, or whatever they're doing
Mm-hmm.
to create that happy life and happy environment. So, no, that's so awesome. What are some of your most favorite essential oils for calming?
Mm. So I love the Trivibrance roll-ons. So there
Mhm.
are, I think, 6 of them now. We use them a lot with like MBSR work, the mind body spirit release training. So I do love there's one called like peace and freedom, one called faith and security. Kind of those to me are more kind of the downshifting. There's actually one called intuition, which I love because it's like, ah. And then there's more like, I tell families, even though the kids are like, oh, my kids are all over the place, la la la, and then they're not sleeping and la la la. And why did you just say you're giving them more energy before bedtime? And it's like, no, 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 no. Trust me, there's a certain kind of energy we need to bring in to calm things down. And then there's a certain kind of energy that we need to, like, there's a certain kind of energy we need in order to fall asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's not exhaustion. That's not an energy, right? I mean, it's an energy, but it's not going to provide sleep every time.
Yeah.
So,
Hmm.
so when we can help them, with some of those tools, that can be great as well. I've used with kids like the Young Living has this little Kid Sense collection. It's got like a sleep one, a tummy one, an owie one, and so those can be fun because they can kind of own that,
Yeah.
when they're old enough to know, like, I think I want this one. Usually they know them by color. It's like the color gives them a feeling, and
Yeah.
and then they can play with those in that way. One of the things that
Nice.
we did a couple years ago, I wrote for this very reason. I wrote an at-home healthcare manual because
Mm.
I was like, I am saying the same thing, hundreds of times a week.
Yeah.
And so, how do we get around this? Whether it was, because DMing or in person, working with clients one on one, and I wrote it from more of the like, yes, it's what I've learned and what I see as a practitioner for sure. But I've been raising babies since I was 9. Not my baby, my own babies, but like I started caring for other people's babies at a really young age, and it was something I was very comfortable with. It came very easily to me. Babies and parents don't frazzle me. So it was like I could really just jump right in and kind of like assess kind of who needed the change in energy and what do we do about it, right? And so I think that so yes, it's from practitioner perspective, but it's also like I am a mom, I might just have a few more tools than the average mom, just by way of our training, right? But it was like taking off the practitioner hat and just writing to, like, to you as a mom, these are things that you can get access to, buy that $35 thing at CVS or Walgreens that you thought was for an old person that actually will support the health of your family. I'll teach you how to use it.
Yeah.
These are non-medical basic healthcare recommendations that can save your butt when you need a minute. So it's less about, dive in and spend loads and loads of money. Even when someone comes to me for an initial visit, I'm always listening for, granted, if they're like chronic and there's severity there and whatnot, yeah, they might be my, annual membership kind of person. But for that person who just is like, what I hear is they just need some general tips and kind of and some tweaks, and like, here's a list of kind of 5 things that I think are just going to benefit the overall health of your family and just kind of take everything, up the ante. And it might make more sense for you to do those things than it is to spend your money putting 1 or 2 people on a program with me.
Right.
Like, I'm less attached to that and more committed to like, what's the outcome they're looking at and for, and can they get there as a group by making a couple general changes,
Yeah.
right? And so that allows for a lot more flexibility with us as practitioners too, like when we're not attached to like being the one that can handle all the things. It's set the ego aside, right, and really look for what it is that family needs.
That's
and
awesome.
see how you
Yeah.
can go about, meeting them there.
Yeah, no, I love it. It's just practical, something you can do right then and there, and it will, like you said, many times save your bacon and be,
Hmm.
yeah, have a second and then regroup and then,
Right.
focus on what you need to focus next. That's so
Sure.
cool. I don't want to finish this interview without talking about electronics and EMFs, and the
Hmm.
impact that they have, not only on ourselves but on children.
Hmm.
um and like, ideally, right, a baby and a kid up to the age of 7 is not heavily exposed to EMFs, electronics, phones, cell phones, tablets, Wi-Fi's, without the proper protection per se,
Hmm.
because they
Hmm.
they do, like our blood brain barrier, it's very still forming, right? I mean, all those formative years as we are growing up. And I often see such behavioral changes as well when kids are so heavily exposed to them. Now you go to school and schools give you tablets. There's Wi-Fi at schools. There's Wi-Fi at home. Everything is Wi-Fi. Cars have Wi-Fi.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I don't. My first cell phone, I was probably maybe 18 or 20 when I owned my first cell phone, and now I feel like babies are born with cell phones,
Yeah.
and have their own family plan. So, what's your opinion about how EMFs and these different electromagnetic impulses are affecting our children?
Well, I'm a big low to no media, get out in nature kind of person. And so these are the things that I look for in my practice. And sometimes I go about it not from like a how many devices are we exposed to and what's going on in your household. And I start asking more questions about, how often do your kids play outside? What does playing outside look like at your house? Are they on the ground? Are they on turf? Like
Mhm.
understanding more of kind of what their surroundings are and what they have access to. Is it like free play, or is it really regimented? Are they signed up for everything that they could possibly be as a 4-year-old, or do they get to like play and nap and pretend because that's their job, right? So
Yeah.
those are the kinds of questions I ask. I always tell families, like, my goal here is not to be nosy, but I am going to sort of push around and ask directly for some information. I want to know what you do for a living. I want to know what you're exposed to that you could be bringing home to your children. I want to understand what your home life is and how it's set up. I want to understand, if you're all co-sleeping in one bed, or if the kids, the dogs sleep with the kids, or if the kids are falling asleep with tablets, or if they fall asleep because they have TVs on in their room. Like, just want to know these things. These are really helpful in identifying what some of the problems are that they're
Hmm.
dealing with. And none of these things are going to go away. So there is this fine line between, like, what do we accept as our norm and how do we plug these things in, and how do we adapt ultimately to what's not going to go away. So I ask those kinds of questions. I make suggestions and recommendations, that are preferable, and people are usually already pretty dialed in to their habits. And so I might start with just like kind of like food logging, right? Okay, well, are you willing to track how many minutes? I don't say hours. I say how many minutes a day, your child might be using the iPad or their cell phone for like scrolling or whatnot. And some of them it just tells you, right? But like a kid on a tablet, when you say minutes, parents come back and they're like, so it's actually hours,
Wow. Yeah.
right? They're even surprised because they think it's like little to no use of the kids like honing in on that. And so sometimes just awareness brings about enough of like, oh, okay, we're going to actually dial this down, or we didn't realize the impact of evening light or letting them fall asleep in front of, some kind of screen opportunity. And then the next thing I have them do is start using diodes because they're inexpensive and they're effective. And it I do want them to change their environment a bit, right? But I don't expect, nor do I actually think it's a good idea for everybody to have like a Faraday cage around their bed. Like, I don't actually know if I can go that far in reality, right? And so, good idea, good plan. I mean, I get it, but I don't know that that's how far we need to go. So, and I'm not saying that's wrong either. I'm just trying to walk that line. So things that are easily applicable, right? Because if we make it tricky, no one's going to comply at all. So that's why I like diodes. So it starts to dial things down. And because I use a measure that I do with muscle testing, I'm able to track like how much of the EMF or the Wi-Fi is a problem. And so I get that number and then I get to watch to see what it does. And so I know if we've put something in to positively impact that, I have an expectation for what I'm going to see. And if I don't see that, then I've got some questions, right? Yeah. So that can lead us just further into education, making plans with our kids for how we could go about doing things differently. EMF rocks. I know people love those bags under the beds and stuff like that. So that's a tricky question with parents because a little bit, the world's different than when we were kids, right? Yeah. I think it was safer for us to run around outside and just leave our homes and go to Bobby's and be back at 4. Yeah. We knew where the snack drawer was at every one of our neighbors' houses. And, that was normal. And people are just a little more buttoned up these days, right? And their willingness to be vulnerable, which I totally understand. And so parents are left with screens, I hate to say it, kind of allow us to be benignly neglectful. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, it's why baby wearing is so great. I used to say this as a doula to, it was like one of the first things I would teach my new moms. I was like, look, we're going to practice this while you're pregnant, all the wraps and the ways that it works, because A, it's just a great way to stay connected to your baby. B, where they are when they start to be on the move. And C, you get to kind of neglect for a second. Okay. They're attached to you. They're not going anywhere and they're not in danger. You get to be you for a second. And I just say that in a lighthearted manner, because I do think we need a minute really. True. As moms. And I don't know that it serves us to be the mom that's got to do things 110% right and be that crunchy mom that can do all the things. Cause that is also a joke. It just is if you can't make fun of it yourself, what are you even doing? Yeah. So it's taking a good solid look. It's being aware first, being willing to engage in conversations around what those modifications and changes could look like and what does make sense for your family. And then looking to see what it is to put some of these things in action. And even just the awareness one alone, that will bring about some change. Yeah. And when they see some change, momentum is what comes with that naturally, right? We've all seen that. So it's really that willingness.
Yeah. Baby steps.
Baby steps.
That's awesome. No, thank you so much. So you're the founder and owner of My Healthy Beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I love your content, been watching your videos, and you have an amazing team of practitioners that you've built, over the years. And I know you guys are working really hard on really changing the paradigm and really bringing real solutions for real people so that they're real, they achieve real health.
Mm-hmm.
And everything you share with us is just so amazing. And I really hope that people have gotten something out of this interview, because it's very powerful stuff. If someone was like, I am so ready to work with Nichi or one of her practitioners, how would one go about finding you?
They could just go to our site, myhealthybeginning.com, and up in the right-hand corner, I think it says book now. So you could either book a complimentary discovery call if that's, you've got to sort of gauge what we do and how we do it. And I actually really appreciate that because it gives me an opportunity to connect, with someone kind of outside of that initial visit, or you can just jump right into that initial visit, booking that and scheduling that if you would like. A lot of people engage with us on social. I'm Nichole Hirsch Kuechle on Instagram, and then we have My Healthy Beginning has their own Instagram page. And sometimes there's just a little chit chat that goes across there before people are ready to book an appointment too. And I also really appreciate that, because I tell you what, I'm such a fan of voice text, because I've got shit to do. and it is such a great way to connect and actually have somebody, hear the tone and the inflection of your voice and And, like we can connect with people's energy really easily that way too. So I always encourage people really just find us, ask the questions you need to ask. And, if I feel like we're not a great fit, I am happy to refer people out,
Right.
to those that I've trained and, have built that vast network that I trust that you'll be in good hands.
That's awesome. And so you're taking clients literally from all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's so cool. That's so
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
And then you're also teaching others. You're a mentor. You're creating an army of amazing practitioners. So if
Mm-hmm.
there's another practitioner out there listening to this interview, how would one go about, getting training from you?
So what I would do is, again, I would just circle around on social media. I mean, you could always send us an email, info@myhealthybeginning.com. Our website at myhealthybeginning.com, if you go to education, you will find any of the muscle testing workshops that we have coming up, whether they are for Cellcore or for my work alone. And for the mentorship, we don't have the practitioner mentorship listed on our website yet. So if you're looking more into that, like it's literally launching like now. So we just did a webinar for it yesterday. So it's literally in very much the now. Just reach out to me on Instagram or the practice on Instagram, and we can get you that link so you can look at whether that's the right step for you.
Wow, that's awesome. So I really appreciate everything you do, Nichi, and your team. Continue educating us as practitioners and continue educating us as clients and giving us all your amazing time and knowledge. I really appreciate your time today, and I really hope everyone enjoys this interview. And I think with nothing more to say, and we're gonna be ending up. Is there anything else you want to say
Awesome.
before we end
No,
off?
I'm just so grateful for the opportunity. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah. Talk to you soon.